And do you have any commitments you would like to honor or make? New ones.
Well, yeah, let me just add one more. In the time that I've served in the Assembly and represented about a third of Council District 2, I've had a program called Government at Your Doorstep, where my staff and I have gone door to door asking them what it is that they need us to do, how we can improve our service to you and solving their problems. Now, you haven't had a chance to do that because I haven't represented you yet, but when I'm representing you in the Council, I'll continue that program. We'll come to your door and ask you how we can help you better.
All right, now Fashion Square. And thank you for reaffirming your commitments that we do have signed by both of the candidates. All right, Paul, I'll ask you first, and then Chris, you can respond. Do you support the Fashion Square expansion?
Not as it's currently laid out. I think there are mitigation measures that need to be made to prevent the traffic impacts that are going to be impacting the neighborhoods adjacent to the north. I haven't seen a willingness yet on the part of the developer to try to mitigate those impacts, but I won't support it as it's currently configured.
And will you consider downsizing the project as an alternative?
I don't want to try to figure it out as we stand here. I think the important thing is to mitigate the impacts in a way that is going to earn the favor of the community and reduce the adverse impacts of the ingress and egress problems that's currently.
All right. And Chris, do you support the Fashion Square expansion?
Not as it's planned, no.
And in just like 2 quick sentences?
What I loved about Fashion Square was when it was an open-air mall. I shopped there, and yay! it was a great facility, and I would love to see the existing mall turned back into an open-air mall. That would be my dream. The other thing I noticed is the traffic. Yesterday I happened to get a tour, and right at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the traffic entering the facilities, it's the middle of a weekday, was blocking the road on Riverside. There's such a lineup to get into the 2 entrances. My desire would be that Fashion Square actually mitigate those traffic problems that exist currently before we even think about expanding that property. So that would be of interest to me to handle it that way.
All right, the next question, Paul. Do you support the recommendations made by former council member Wendy Gruhl for the traffic mitigation measures for Fashion Square?
I'm sorry, as I stand here, I'm not recalling having seen her recommendations, so I'd be loath to try to say whether I support or oppose them, because there have been times when Wendy Gruhl and her staff have been supportive of neighborhoods in this community. There have been times when they have not been supportive of neighborhoods in this community, and I'm disinclined to make an agreement to what she recommended unless I really have a chance to sit and go through it, and I haven't done that. I apologize.
All right, Chris, do you support the recommendations made by Councilmember Wendy Gruhl, former council member?
As I understand it, the streets most impacted were those that live on those streets would prefer to have those streets blocked off so that access is not allowed from the mall into the neighborhoods. And the DOT has come back with some kind of a pork chop plan, which it does allow for right turns in and right turns out. My position would be to sit down with the Department of Transportation and this project and ensure that the neighborhood gets what it wants, and we need to understand all the reasons that we can or can't have those, the blockages of those streets in the cul-de-sac. So I would be in favor of pursuing the cul-de-sac, which I'm not sure is the same as the current plan.
All right, well, this is a quick summation, because I see who's standing at the corner. Will you support the Fashion Square's residents' request for street closures? Yes or no?
That would be yes.
Do you support the residents' request for street closures?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess that's why we have 2 cameras here, just to make sure we have all these commitments on double film or video. Okay, the next part of the evening is allowing the candidates to ask question of the other candidate. And so I'd like to start out with Chris, and we'll keep alternating in the various sections as to who starts first. Chris, do you have a question for Paul?
Richard, the time. Remind them of the time. 30 seconds for the question.
Okay, and it's, well, they have it marked down. It's 30 seconds and
1 minute for the answer.
1 minute response.
According to the Sacramento Bee, Paul, you are one of those assembly members at the top of the list in accepting gifts. We, in fact, identified $27,000 worth of gifts that you've accepted over the course of your 3 years in the assembly. Yet you're running as a reformer and an outsider, and you need to gain the trust of the people in this room. How do you explain taking that number of gifts, that dollar amount of gifts, and your ranking as one of the highest gift takers in the assembly? Please answer that question.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Is this?
Yeah. Okay, sure. Well, thanks for the question, Chris. First of all, a big part of that total that you give were 2 trips that I took. One was a study trip that I took on energy and infrastructure issues to South Africa. Another was a trip that I took to Israel as a guest of the Jewish Federation. And I think both of those were very important trips for me as a leader in the state to take. That was a big part of the total. Another part of the total, ironically, was a visit that you and I made together to the Hollywood Bowl, when you were working for Paramount as one of the leading special interests in Southern California, and you were paying for my trip to the Hollywood Bowl. It was great, Chris. I had a lot of fun. But you know, when we're talking about special interest influences, let's remember that for the last 30 years, you have been the special interests. You've been the one writing the checks to politicians throughout California and this country as you fulfilled your jobs and lobbying for one of the biggest corporations in America.
Thank you very much. Paul, a question for Chris.
Well, yes, as long as we're talking about special interests, Chris, in this week alone, you've had $250,000 spent on your behalf and attacking me by special interests, primarily public employee unions and the Chamber of Commerce. Now, with that kind of money being spent, how can anyone in this room really believe you when you say that you're the independent voice, you're the breath of fresh air who's not going to be beholden to special interests?
Thank you.
Well, I'm very proud to have the support of the Police Protective League. It represents the 9,900 sworn officers of the Los Angeles Police Department. Both Paul and I fought very hard for that endorsement, and I received that endorsement, and they're the ones that are doing an IE. That's what they do, and they would be doing that IE for independent expenditure for Paul if he had received their endorsement. So the rest of the people doing you also went to the LA Chamber and asked for their endorsement as well, and they would have spent money on you if they had endorsed you. So it's really just, that's how politics works in the city. I'm actually for a cleanup campaign. I think we ought to have a clean money campaign. Going through this process myself as someone coming from the private sector, it is very hard to raise money and to have a viable campaign, especially when you're running against the assistant majority leader of the state assembly, who has the party backing and who has the backing of the speaker and who has the backing of the SEIU, the state employees union. They spent $8 million on Mark Ridley Thomas's race, so that's what I might be up
Thank you very much. Chris, question for Paul.
So yeah, I have a budget question, Paul. If you lose this election, according to the Secretary of State, that will save the taxpayers $1.9 million. How best would you spend that $1.9 million?
I'm not sure if that was a rhetorical question or